What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
Running gear. Braking system. The Pajero has disc brakes front and rear, and as a parking brake is used drum inside the rear hub. The design of disc brakes has not very reliable cuffs and dust covers, and the use of two piston calipers with a floating bracket implies the accumulation of dirt between the cylinders, and the material of caliper pins is not very well chosen. They easily corrode and jam. After any trips to the mud, it is very desirable to clean brakes completely, unless, of course, you do not want to rebuild calipers in half a year. The size of discs is 290 mm. On a larger off-roader it could be bigger, so the intensity of brake use is high, as well as the risk of overheating. At the same time, the resource of discs and pads is quite acceptable. It does not fall below 30,000. Brake pipes rot, but not so intensively. In case of anything, their relining will be more expensive than on average cars, because of the large number of elements that need to be dismantled, but not critical. What there are real problems with is ABS. There is a system without a vacuum booster, with an electric pump that pressurizes the main line. Who said Mercedes SBC? That's right, that's exactly the kind of system used here. Electric pumps like this have drunk a lot of blood in their day for owners of the E-Class W211 ECLS Class C219 and, even earlier, the Saab 90,000 and the VW Passat. Mitsubishi Electric offered its variant for the third-generation Pajero around the same time that Mercedes announced its SBC. The design here is similar. Two batteries, pump drive by electric motor, pressure maintenance by hydraulic accumulator, reserve circuit, and formation of artificial force on the pedal. In general, the system from Mitsubishi was simpler than SBC, which appeared soon, did not have such serious integration with onboard systems of the car. Pajero in general is simpler organized, and did not aim at ultimatum increase of driving pleasure, and certainly did not have meters for everything and anything, so it worked until one of the components died without any reminders of problems. Car owners didn't even worry about how many clicks they had and how much mileage the unit had. The first mass problems began to appear somewhere in the 6th year of the car's operation. Error on ABS unit and tight pedal were rare at first, and mostly the problem was in pressure drop of hydraulic accumulator. The pair was simply replaced with a new one and everything was restored. Repair pairs did not last so long. The original on the cars before the restyle went for 6 to 8 years. The next one was enough for 3 to 5 at the most. On cars after restyling, the hydro accumulator was a little more reliable. In any case, its resource was higher. Many cars reached up to 10 years with the original. But replacing the accumulator is only part of the story. Electric motors of hydraulic pumps of ABS blocks started to fail in cars before restyling. The main problem is wear or simply crumbling of collector plates, and began light tapping with a hammer on the pump in the morning. Installation of electric motors from Gazelle heater through the adapter plate. Repair of engines with replacement of the collector. Nowadays all cars before and after restyling probably have replaced hydraulic accumulators. Many have changed or stiffened the pump. Unfortunately, it is impossible to guarantee that everything is done for ages and of any quality. Checking the ABS system when buying should be thorough, and you should be prepared for trouble if it has not been completely restored recently. An old accumulator kills the pump. A worn pump kills the accumulator. Replacement separately usually leads to a waste of money. And a new unit costs from 130,000 rubles, which for cars with an average price of 400 to 700,000, as of spring 2021, frankly a lot. Detail original price of non-original 2 brake system front brake pads 407 82 245, Pajed 1 893 rear. Brake pads 4101 Bosch 140 Textar 1 231 brake disc front 290 by 26 5 165 88 862 Textar 2 838 brake disc rear 300 by 22 4 658 82. 711 Textar 2857 suspension of Pajero is rigid, and even in its American twin, Montero, is not distinguished by special comfort. This, probably, is its main disadvantage, because in everything else it is very good. To lever front, multi-lever rear, it allows to decouple the size of rubber and clearance of the car. At the same time, It turned out to be resourceful, with large strokes, well adapted for off-roading. In front, the double wishbone is very strong. It is a pity that original silent blocks are not in sale, only ball bearing. But there is enough non-original. The main thing is to accurately set the working position of the lever when tightening, and the silence will last a long time. With mileage over 1.5 or 200, there are factory ones. It is also important not to miss the moment of spring sagging. It is worth restoring the middle point once a year, especially after installing or removing additional equipment. Ball joints are strong, but it is necessary to keep an eye on the condition of dust covers, as they are often scuffed in mud, and moisture and sand get into the joint. The levers themselves are massive and strong. You should try to damage such levers, but the places of attachment to the subframe are damaged more often. They suffer from corrosion and mechanical loads, so sometimes they have to be welded. At the same time, the subframe mounting to the body suffers. The gearbox is suspended on 2 brackets, each on its own silent blocks, and they also wear out. Often owners do not change minor, in their opinion, elements, and for years cannot cope with vibrations and shocks from the suspension and transmission. And the surprise is that only as long as the elastokinematics of all the silent blocks are coordinated, the car remains relatively comfortable. Most of all difficulties arise in those who make an elevator of the body relative to the subframe, sometimes in this case, even with all the new rubbers, vibrations cannot be defeated. And one should not forget about the replacement of the shock absorber bushing, for the feeling of breakdown when driving over joints is mainly responsible for the backlash in this connection. The rear suspension serves less, usually only lasts up to 150,000, but the main reason for repairs is not backlash, but hard shocks coming to the body. It is usually quite simple: wear of the shock absorber bushings, and lack of rubber gasket under the suspension spring. Silent blocks are often visually still intact, but you can find traces of contact between the lever and the silent attachment point, due to increased pliability. The ball bearing runs until dirt gets into it, which is a matter of luck. Small transverse lever convergence also often begins to squeak after off-road trips. And if the car is generally expeditionary and is operated with overloads, it is necessary to look at the condition of the bump stop, and the geometry of the upper triangular arm, and the condition of the springs. And in general, the condition of suspension in cutlets prepared for serious adventures is absolutely unpredictable. Detail original price of non-original 2 suspension lower A arm of front suspension 12 788 sailing 4 173. CTR 5049 lower arm rear silent block not available Phoebus 521 CTR 722 lower arm ball bearing 4986 BGA 705 SKF 1 378 upper arm ball bearing 2280 Akataka 619 CTR 1032 front hub 12 832 GMB 5005 SKF 18 415 longitudinal arm rear 15 622 dominant 4088 rear arm silent. Block 1916 Marzuma 959 polyurethane 889 steering system is with a regular rack and steering wheel. The resource is quite decent. The mechanism usually works out its 200 to 300,000, but leaks happen regularly, both on hoses and on the rack. And the side oil seals of the rack leak more often than the rings and shaft. The reason for many problems is overheating of the system on the ground and low speeds. It could use a large radiator for hydraulics, if the machine is often off-road. And thoroughly check the hoses in the engine compartment. Fluid leaks may well be a slow leak from the power booster system. Additional attention should be paid to the pump in diesel cars. It is very non-standard here, with a gear drive, and it is expensive. A new one is more than €1,000, and BAU is not cheap either. Branded rotor repair kits are available, but are more expensive than a complete pump from a non-original supplier, about twice as much, €120 for gasoline and €200 for diesel. So a howling pump is not a good thing. Here it howls only with serious wear. Transmission. General problems: the Pajero Super Select 4 transmission is sophisticated, with a rich choice of modes, and surprisingly strong. All components, including driveshafts, are very reliable. Among the options were locks and front and rear differentials, and in regional versions could be installed simpler variants with mechanical drive of transfer case and even with no center differential. The bulk of the trucks were equipped with a 5-speed automatic V5A51 developed by Mitsubishi, but not all of them. American Montero was equipped with 4-speed V4A51 in combination with a 3.5 engine in the basic configuration XLS, in limited there. Was already a 5-speed gearbox. Right-hand drive versions from the home market in Exceed L, ZF, and Exceed S were equipped with 4-speed gearboxes even in long wheelbase version and with 3.5 GDI engines. Variants from Southeast Asia with a 3-litre engine go with the same V4A51, but cars from the UAE, suddenly with a 4-speed Aisin AW30-70LE, although it is not reflected in the documentation. There is even more diversity in the choice of locks, reinforced gearboxes, etc. The documentation for all sorts of special series is not easy, and there may be difficulties in repair, although in general, the machine retains the potential of a big constructor. By and large, everything fits from anywhere. The body itself is universal. Boxes are connected with engines and gearboxes through adapter plates and removable bell housing. The main thing when ordering non-standard variants is to take control units and wiring at once. By the way, the bell housing of the gearbox is often cracked in accidents. Check it for welding. Mechanical boxes mechanics here is mostly V5M31-6 or V5M3166X. It was still used on the Pajero Evo and other most powerful versions. Of the second generation, it holds for 450 Newton-meters of torque, so it has no problems with gasoline motors. Unless the bearing in the middle housing of the box turns. This happens after overheating, when the pressure plate and bearing seating in the aluminum housing become loose. The condition of the transmission, even at mileage of 350 to 400,000, is usually still decent, although the wear of synchronizers and clutches of the second and third gears occurs quite regularly. It is not possible to switch quickly. The bearings themselves are quite reliable. The shafts are strong. Repair is possible, but usually not expedient, as the price of the complete box is lower than the price of a typical repair kit of bearings and forks with synchronizers. And in case of serious troubles with the box, for example, after an oil leak, the difference between the price of the contract and repair will be many times. Just take care of the unit. Do not allow leaks and bumps on the body. It is quite delicate. And when buying, do not forget to check oil and condition of magnets. With a 2.5 motor, there is a weaker and less reliable box V5MT1. Fortunately, the motor itself is rare, met only on some European variants and occasionally occurs among Asian versions. Automatic boxes, since the design of 4-speed V4A51 and 5-speed V5A51 is generally the same, they also have common problems. The box is quite reliable, has no mass problems. The cooling system is realized with the use of a heat exchanger in the cold radiator tank and an additional radiator in most versions. Minus of such scheme is only one. At rare replacement of antifreeze, the tubular heat exchanger sometimes corrodes at the places of welding with subsequent penetration of antifreeze into the automatic transmission. For this box it is not fatal, if you notice the problem in time, but, of course, it does not contribute to durability. Usually the most loaded friction suffer. The most frequent problem with these automatic transmissions is not this at all, but a simple failure of the input and output shaft speed sensors, as well as the selector sensor. At high loads and mileage much more than 200,000 begin to gradually manifest purely resource problems with wear of GDT locking pads, frictions of reverse package, brake belts, and frictions over drive. Besides, the filter of the box is very sensitive to dirt. It sags pressure strongly at accumulation of dirt, and solenoids of blocking of GDT and linear pressure with time wear out and require replacement. The box is very easy to repair. It has good wiring and a good mechanical part, even if it is made without an insane safety margin, as in the old 4-speed Aisin. But the mileage is over 400,000 now, so investments in this part are not excluded. Repairs are unlikely to be cheap, so buying a contract ASC from Japan is still the easiest route, but guaranteed working units seem to be starting to run out. Prepare yourself for the fact that just replacing and all won't work. A new box will in all likelihood go a little while and beg for repair too. And the best choice becomes a preliminary defectovka used automatic transmission before installation with replacement of seals, the most loaded friction packs and solenoids. 4-wheel drive all-wheel drive on almost all cars of this generation is Super Select 2 with a full range of driving modes, a lowered row, a center lock and the possibility of including a rear-wheel drive mode. The main problems encountered by almost everyone are errors on the valves and actuators of the front axle hub connection vacuum actuator, and transfer case sensor failures. Pneumatics is a thin thing, valves eventually fail, and here relatives in the person of Hyundai H1 come in handy. Valves from them are 3 times cheaper than original ones, and not worse in quality. The block of transfer case sensors starts to malfunction with time, and you can understand from the manual which of the sensors works badly, but they can be cleaned and repaired. Sometimes it happens that everything is fine with the sensor itself, but the wiring is shorted. On high-mileage cars, the mode selector in the passenger compartment and the motor drive gearbox on the transfer case itself also wear out and fail. Both parts are not cheap. For the price of a new one, you can often take a second-hand automatic transmission in the assembly. So when buying, it is not worth neglecting to check the operation of all modes of the transmission. The indication should work and there should be no flashing orange selector lamp on the dashboard when driving. Front and rear gearboxes suffer mainly from water ingress when driving off-road. You need to watch out for oil and fogging, but overall they are almost trouble-free. True, there are quite a few performance options, especially the rear one. And, as already mentioned in the part about the suspension, do not forget to keep an eye on the suspension of the gearboxes. It often leads to unnecessary vibrations, which are difficult to catch. Cardan shafts in cars are strong, but not eternal. In the front one usually fails ball joints. It does not live long when the cover is broken, but as long as there are contract ones, including those from Delica, it is not a big problem. Motors. General problems apart from the 4M41 diesel engine. Everyone here is essentially an old acquaintance. The gasoline family 6H72, 74, 75 had many years and generations at the time of installation on the Pajero 3 Montero 3. Diesel families 4D56 and 4D40 were also put, including on the predecessor. Gasoline motors are characterized by good appetite, long life, maintainability, and a wide range of versions. All this leads globally to 2 things. Firstly, to frequent installation of HBO. Secondly, to self or garage repair, quite rarely of high quality. As a result, under the hood there is often a complete mess, non-original units from other Mitsubishi and Hyundai models, as well as traces of collective repair. Gasoline engines, the 6G7 engine family appeared in 1986, and the Pajero 3 received its relatively late versions. Japanese and European cars were mainly equipped with 3.5-litre 6G74 with direct injection GDI and heads with 2 camshafts in each, 2H24V, with an output of 203 to 223 forces depending on the version. American cars were most often also equipped with 3.5-litre 6G74, but with distributed injection MPI and SOHC heads, however, also on 24 valves, with an output of 200 forces. Alternative option for the U.S. 3.8-litre 6G75 MPI soak 24V with an output of 220 horsepower. In Europe and Asia also met 3.06G72 MPI soak 24, 180 horsepower, motors. They are until 2003 even with a cable throttle, but more often with electronic. The main problems and peculiarities of this motor family have not changed much over the years and with the release of new modifications. First of all, the use of hydraulic tensioner in the timing drive imposes high requirements to the quality of the part itself and to the oil pressure. The tensioner easily fails even before the other elements of the timing gear wear out, causes vibrations in case of oil pressure drop or clog channel in it. At cold starts you should be careful. Do not start the motor with a pusher and try to use as much as possible fluid oil on cold in winter. A sharp knocking noise when the engine is running is one of the signs of the hydraulic tensioner failure, and a flapping belt will not last long. The phases will jump sooner or later. The hydro compensators here are of an unusual design. They are installed in the valve rocker arms, and their body is held in its place only by a stop in the valve. The design itself is very compact, and with rare oil changes, bad oil, or the presence of sealant in it, the hydro compensator clogs very quickly. However, even in ideal conditions, they rarely live more than 200 km. It is possible, of course, to delay with replacement and to change only those, which are obviously easily compressible, but there are 24 of them in any case and the resource is plus or minus the same, so you will have to come back often. On the other hand, replacing everything at once will easily cost €250. Sometimes there is wear of the seat of the hydro compensator in the rocker arm, which leads to falling out of the seat at high speeds, and at the initial stage, just to the leakage of oil from it on the body. And at any oil starvation the liners suffer, They are relatively narrow and loaded here. And their resource is not very long. At mileage of 250 to 300, you need to carefully monitor oil pressure and suspicious knocks. Fortunately, the crankshaft is rarely damaged in such cases, only if the liner has already rotated. Small resource problems like leaky gaskets and tubes are also present, especially unpleasant when the tubes in the block collapse. Under the intake manifold or the rear connecting ducts of the cooling system and VKG leak. Uneven idle and weak engine mounts are not much of a problem, and depend heavily on mileage and motor variant. The 3-litre motor with electronic throttle performs best here. The 3-litre with mechanical throttle is slightly worse, and the 3-handled and 5 GDI has the most problems. But revs aren't the only issue. In general, if you got a 203 horsepower 6G74 with direct injection, expect problems. There are expensive fuel equipment, and intolerance of 90-second gasoline, and tendency to piston group Zakexerovka, and, what is especially unpleasant, absence of repair pistons in sale. The company withdrew them from sale quite a long time ago, and it is already problematic to buy a set. The piston itself is very different from the MPI version. It has a developed displacer, not interchangeable. The only way out is to order forging, which in any case will be more expensive than serial castings. Moreover, in most cases forging is not wanted to be made of high silicon alloys with low expansion coefficient. Such billets are not in demand among tuners, which means that the motor will have to be assembled with large gaps. That's why American Montero with power exactly 200 and conventional injection are more popular among connoisseurs, despite the simpler interior and high mileage. Diesel motors. The main diesel on this generation is the 3.2-litre 4M41 at 160-165 HP. Unlike the earlier 4M40, it has direct injection rather than a vortex chamber, and 16 valves instead of 8. And the working volume has increased by 200 cubic meters. The third generation got a version with an electronic fuel injector Zexel VRZ, which is considered problematic because of the design features and price. The manufacturer Zexel was bought by Bosch, but you are unlikely to get help with service at the company stations. There are obviously difficulties with repair of this unit in Russia. There are few specialized services, spare parts are expensive, and it is not Kopek iron that breaks. In most cases, in case of breakdown, you will have to look for a second-hand fuel injector, especially if you live in the countryside. Or master the skills of reanimation of precision mechanics on YouTube. If you are lucky and go to the repair center immediately after the injection advance sensor error appears, you will most likely avoid breakage of the advance piston, scoring of the shaft, rotor, and bushings. In such a rare case, the repair price will be within 10,000 rubles. Full restoration in the best years cost more than 60,000. This is if you manage to find a master who will do it. This fuel injector does not tolerate solidification of diesel fuel and system overblowing. A serious breakdown is almost guaranteed in this case. When checking is obligatory control by scanner, check parameters actual CSP and target CSP should be up to 29%, better up to 25%. After 32% usually visually noticeable violations in the work of the motor. High readings indicate problems with the rod or plunger pair wear. You can also try to check the motor under load and see if there is heavy black smoke coming from the exhaust. Diagnostics at a specialized service can tell you a lot about the problem, but you still need to find one. Later versions of the engine on Pajero 4 were equipped with common rail injection, with which the engine became much more reliable. But on the third generation of the car, such a motor cannot be put without global modifications. And a simple mechanical fuel injection system Bosch VE from earlier 4M40 is not suitable. It can be put and even start the engine. But the shape of the injection curve and the moments of peak pressure of the engine with vortex chamber mixing and direct injection are too different. Experiments have been done. Kovac F or Bosch VE injectors are put in and tuned, but the engines are usually severely underpowered and smoky, so the selection of the shape of the setting disc and angles continues. There are individual examples of success, but with such modifications in any case ABS and ESP will not work normally. In addition to the unfortunate fuel injector, the motor has other difficulties. The resource of chain timing is quite decent by today's standards, 200,000+ kilometers, but you need to be careful when replacing it. If there is play of balancer shafts, it is necessary to change their liners at once. Yes, and the chain breaks when the mileage is too high. You can't drive with a knocking one. The damping pulley is very delicate. Its resource is low, especially in cars with ICP. the rubber delaminates very quickly at frequent driving at low speeds. There are also several drive belts, each of which requires tension control. The timing gaps need to be adjusted very often, literally every 15,000 kilometers, just like on the old 4D56. And oil leaks through the oil filter cup and heat exchanger are regular, due to failed gasket. Versions from the beginning of 2000 with actively working EGR valve are also characterized by strong deposits of carbon deposits in the intake manifold, which makes the throttle put here for better operation of EGR throttle stick. Overheating causes cracks in the cylinder head and pistons, and at 300 plus miles the cylinder head should be checked carefully. Sometimes cracks sometimes fall not into the antifreeze channel, which is easily detected by excessive pressure in the cooling system, and piston soapiness, but into the cylinder head cavity, which causes a sharp increase in crankcase gas pressure and oil loss. The old 2.5-litre 4D56 diesel engine on the third-generation Pajero is extremely rare. And, strangely enough, this is the second version of the motor with a still conventional mechanical fuel injector and conventional injectors, without common rail and variable geometry turbines. In addition to difficulties with a small belt in the timing drive, there are disadvantages in the form of strong oil leaks from all cracks, sensitivity of the piston and cylinder head to overheating and tendency to cracks at prolonged work at high load, and crankshaft. Liners often wear out at mileage of 250 to 300,000. In general, it is necessary to keep an eye on oil pressure and noises, though it is difficult to catch extra noise with a diesel. Read more about 4D56 in Review Hyundai H1 Well, and Diesel 2 8-litre 4M40 is almost unreal to meet at all, except for Brazilian or Thai cars. They are found only in neighbouring Belarus, and that in trace amounts. Detail original price of non-original 2-engine radiator 52030 loser 6639 Denso 19216 timing belt 30. 3. 57190 Mitsubishi 2382 Dayco 1951 timing chain 3. 24 330 CGA 839 did 3631 timing kit 3. 2 not available OSK 11501 BGA 2783. Tensioner 3. 53 494 Rue 1 592 ENA 4 954 to take or not to take. The best version of the Pajero is a gasoline version with distributed injection, meaning either a 3-litre or the rare 3.5 from the U.S. with 200 horsepower, not 202 or 220. Logically, it would no longer be a Pajero, but a Montero. Cars with direct injection or diesels will be noticeably more troublesome. Otherwise, it is possible, as always, to advise to give preference to the cars, as close to factory condition as possible, and not to save on diagnostics. From unusual expensive problems here, it is possible to remember only the notorious ABS pump, and in the rest it is a strong automobile, which has a good residual resource even in 20-year age. In conclusion, the Mitsubishi Pajero 3 presents a unique blend of strengths and weaknesses. While the insidious ABS pump and the weak TND can pose challenges, the vehicle's eternal automatic transmission and robust V6 engine offer a compelling driving experience. For those considering this model, it's essential to weigh these factors carefully. With proper maintenance and awareness of its quirks, the Pajero 3 can still be a reliable companion on and off the road. Thank you for watching, and we hope this insight helps you make an informed decision.